I, female, 45, have been married for the last 10 years to my husband Antoine, male, 40, who is originally from France. He has moved to the United States for work. It was actually during one of his trips here that we met. However, Antoine's mom, Marie, female, 65, has constantly been hovering over Antoine and, by extension, our relationship. However, there is quite a close bond between her and her kids, so I do get why she's so attached. Antoine's father is also out of the picture, and their family included only Marie, Antoine, and Antoine's sister, Elise, female, 24. I hate to say this, but Elise is not a good daughter. Marie has a bunch of health issues, scoliosis, arthritis, and general health problems that come with old age. And I have done the brunt of taking care of her as she goes on. For the first 5 years of our marriage, I often used to travel to France with Antoine to take care of Marie in Lyons, even though her own daughter lived in Paris. Thankfully, I was able to manage this as my work is remote, but it was still quite a task to pull off. Marie was always grateful to me for the effort I put in, but at the end of the day, she also used to call Elise her rock for dropping in a call like once a week. It was quite annoying, but I wasn't 100% in on their family dynamics and didn't want to comment on something that I wasn't familiar with. Eventually, it did get to a point where it was getting financially and emotionally draining for us to keep constantly traveling to France. Hubby and I sat down and weighed out our options. We could either ask mother-in-law to come live with us in the States, or we could ask Elise to take a more active role in taking care of her mother. When we called Elise and proposed this, she said that she was independent and enjoying her life, and that it wouldn't be a big deal for her mom to move to the US. She was dodging responsibility and making us out to be the villain by asking us to discuss this with Marie privately. I remember her saying something like, "Mama would not care. She is healthy anyways. Besides, a little pain is normal in old age, no?" That comment alone perfectly puts into perspective how out of touch Elise was with her mother. I was the one who was checking in with mother-in-law about her weekly appointments. And whenever I was in France, I accompanied her on certain physiotherapy sessions to make her feel safe. Elise? She stuck to calling once a week and doing the bare minimum. Anyways, we had to bite the bullet and ask mother-in-law to move to the States, and she was dead set against the idea. At first, she said that she wasn't interested in leaving behind her culture, and next, she tried to claim that she was perfectly fine living alone in Lyon. It took us almost a year for us to convince her to come to the States, and another year to sort out the visa process. Then another before she felt comfortable living with us in New Orleans. It does mean that she has now been living in the States for 5 years, and has become well acquainted with the local culture. However, she still finds it a little tough to live here and misses France a lot. I won't lie, I don't blame her for this. During all of this time, the main updates we got from Elise were about her promotions at work, her relationships, and barely any check-ins about how her own mother was doing. About 3 months ago, though, we got a call from Elise that dropped a huge piece of news on us. She was going to get married. This blindsided me and Antoine, but apparently not Marie. The guy had asked for her contact information through Elise and had called her to seek her blessing. Really old-fashioned, I know, but also gentlemanly. Ever since then, he had kept in touch with mother-in-law, his future mother-in-law as well. Aha. Updating her about French current affairs, the things she was interested in, and more. When we were discussing this guy with Marie, she was talking about him with such warmth that we felt like she had found a second son. I was a little jealous, although I hate to say it. Although my mother-in-law isn't hostile with me and doesn't do crazy things like you see on this site, she has always been a little cold to me. At best, she respects me and is cordial to me, but nothing beyond that. Antoine has often spoken to her about it, but she isn't willing to change her behavior, even with the amount of effort I've put in through our relationship to keep her healthy. I think a little bit of it has to do with the fact that I am foreign. Despite my best efforts to learn and appreciate her culture, I can even speak French fluently now. Anyways, back to Elise's fiance. We found out that his name was Jacques, and he was an extremely wealthy banker based out of Paris. Even more exciting, he wanted to pay for all three of us to come to France for a month, culminating in an engagement party in the last week of our trip. We landed in Paris and had a really fun trip planned. Just being in France made Marie 10 times happier than I had ever seen her. On the day of the engagement party, Marie was invited onto the stage to deliver a toast. Clapping and cheering along, I wasn't expecting to hear what she ended up saying at all. Loosely translated from French, Marie threw me under the bus, saying that Elise was the only source of light in her troubling time in the US, and that the only reason she moved was that Antoine and I forced her to go. She didn't mention the countless hours that Antoine and I dedicated to her, never mind that it was almost like she was making us out to be villains. I felt so embarrassed, and I could feel everyone glaring at me as Marie kept talking about her homeland. With no clue as to why Marie would do this, I was shocked beyond belief. But out of the corner of my eye, I could see Elise looking on in enjoyment. I knew she had to have some contribution to this whole affair. I ended up approaching her after the party and asking her if she had any idea what the whole speech was about. Elise then told me that she had asked mother-in-law to deliver a speech that makes her out to be a family-loving, caring person because Jacques' family appreciated behavior like that. Although she claims that she never told Marie to speak about me so negatively, I'm inclined to believe she was lying to save her skin. Besides, I never saw her stick up for me if that was the case. She admitted to emotionally manipulating her mother by saying that if she didn't deliver this speech, she would be directly responsible for screwing up her one chance at love. After I went back to the hotel, I was livid and spoke to Antoine about it. He's also really pissed, but we really don't know how to get back at Elise. Mother-in-law was manipulated, and there was no point taking it out on her, but Elise deserved to be taken down a peg. There was just a week left before we left for back home, and I decided that I could figure something out by speaking to Jacques. Putting on an act, I asked if Antoine and I could speak to him in private, and I told him that everything mother-in-law said was correct, and that we weren't the best for Marie. He clearly had a strong bond with his soon-to-be mother-in-law and was eager to figure out a way to make her feel better. Without skipping a beat, I asked whether he would be comfortable with having Marie moving in. We would continue to support her from the States, and we clearly loved her, but her heart was back home in France. Jacques agreed to this, and I managed to convince him that we should keep this a surprise for Elise until her wedding day. Of course, with the amazing image he had of Elise after mother-in-law's speech, he was inclined to believe she would love this idea. The wedding was a month away, and we spoke to Marie about it after our trip to France ended. She was ecstatic about the idea of going back to France, and the fact that she was being welcomed by her son-in-law made her feel happy. It was kind of cute, I won't lie. Despite her coldness to me, I was fond of her. Elise, at this point, was the only one in the dark about it. We booked another ticket for her back to Paris on the day before the wedding and sorted out everything logistically. The flight is tomorrow, and now I've started having doubts about whether what Antoine and I are doing is correct. Reddit, is this a good idea? Update 1. Jacques surprised Elise with the news on the altar, and she called us screaming as soon as she was out of public view. She can't openly say that she dislikes the setup of having her mother live in the same city as her because everyone believes that she should be elated by it. I told her tough luck and explained that everything had been set up for Marie to live in Paris now. If she wanted her back in the States, she was going to have to be the one to bring it up. Update 2. Jacques and Elise have been married for a few months, and from what I heard from Antoine and his friends in France, they have been fighting a fair bit about the fact that Elise doesn't care about her mom as much as she let on. The lie from her engagement party is caving in around her. She is acting selfish and doesn't want to deal with Marie's health problems, and Jacques is her caretaker for all intents and purposes. Update 3. Elise ended up having a breakdown and confessing that she made up a lie at the engagement party. While Jacques was shocked and disappointed, he was willing to work through it together. Marie also got a bit of a reality check during her time in France, as she is missing the kind of care we used to give her. However, Jacques suggested paying for home help in France so Marie could get constant attention and live in her home country. I hope that at the end of the day their situation ends up being stable. We're also visiting her in France next month to figure things out. NTA, your sister-in-law wants to have her cake and eat it too. If she wants to be portrayed as an amazing, caring daughter, she should put in the work, IMAO. NTA, IMAO, you did your part for Marie. Don't worry. Leaving your home country at an old age is tough. I get that she couldn't adjust to the States. I think the arrangement in your latest update would work best for everyone. Jacques is really a saint in this whole story, and I hope Elise learns her lesson. Next story. I, 27, female, was on a flight back home from overseas. 2.5 hours. I'm not from English-speaking country. The country I flew from is a neighboring country and is an English-speaking country. Ethnically, we look similar. I bought aisle seats when I booked my flight. This is due to medical reasons. I have lower cervical instability where my neck and spine shifts a little and presses my C7 to C8 nerves, causing numbness and stiffness on finger 4 and 5 on both hands. It's manageable by muscle strengthening, but in the meantime, I couldn't stay in sitting, lying position for more than 15 minutes without my fingers going numb and stiff. I chose the aisle seat so I would walk to the toilet often, easily to relieve my neck and reduce numbness. When I boarded the aircraft, I saw a guy, around early 30s, who was already on my seat, with an old man next to him. I used English as I didn't know which nationality he is and asked him politely to please move as that was my seat. He smiled and asked me if I'd switch seats with him because he needs to help his dad to the toilet due to his old age, in my native language. I wouldn't have minded if his seat was an aisle seat, but his seat was in the middle seat in the opposite row. So I said no in English. I'm a pretty anxious person and I don't like confrontation. Being multilingual doesn't help either when you're nervous. I could register my native language, but I almost answered this guy in Chinese instead of English or my native language. I was that anxious. He understood English. When I asked him to please move again, he frowned and insisted that he needs to be next to his dad and how a young woman like me, I look high schoolish, can't be considerate to an old man. At this point, I was pissed, but also almost took the guy's seat just so I wouldn't block other passengers behind me. Thankfully, one of the stewardesses saw me blocking the way and asked to see our boarding pass. She straight away gave this guy a stern look and asked him to go back to his seat. He tried to argue, but the stewardess asked him to move and gave my seat to me. So he did unhappily. I thanked the stewardess and got myself comfortable. Then an old lady from my city, because she talked in my native language, offered to switch seats with this guy's dad, so this guy and his dad now sat next to each other in the opposite row. This guy thanked the old lady and said in my native language, "I see old people have more manners. I guess some people are just that heartless." I don't think this guy knew I understood what he said. My English accent is like the neighboring countries since I studied and lived there for a few years, so is my overall style. Anyway, pretty much him, the old lady, and some other passengers, all middle to old age people, from my city, chimed in and talked crap about me while I pretended to not understand anything. AITA here? Like, seriously, was I the crazy one for wanting to sit at my seat that I'd paid for? Why did so many people on board defend this guy? NTA. I don't know why people now feel so inclined to take others' seats when they can pick their seat when buying their ticket. If he really had his father's best intention, he should have kept that in mind when purchasing their ticket seats. Even if you did not have a medical reason, you wouldn't be the a-hole because you paid for that seat and he didn't. I'm Asian too, and I feel like the older generation think that the younger generation owe them something and we have to bend over backwards for them in any situation. Sorry you were bombarded with those nasty comments on the flight. NTA, you booked the seat. He probably booked too late to get seats close together, so figured he could pull a fast one. Next story. I have 3 kids, 14, 13, 9. A husband, and my mother-in-law also moved in recently due to old age and not having a retirement fund. I got along really well with my mother-in-law prior to her moving in. Since she had moved in, not a single person in this house outside of me does jack shit. My mother-in-law is always consuming everyone's attention. Say, for instance, if my daughter is doing the dishes, mother-in-law will call for her from the other room to go paint nails. If my husband is doing something around the house, she will ask him to run to the store with her, and they are gone for hours because they end up getting brunch and whatever. She does the same thing with my boys as well. If they're doing anything at all that doesn't involve mother-in-law, she will automatically just ask them to come play cards with her. I've approached the conversation one too many times about the fact that I'm tired of this, because I'm not the only one who is doing any cleaning whatsoever when there's 6 people who live here. Mother-in-law's way of helping out was to start trying to take over cooking dinner, and she is an absolute atrocious cook and puts an overwhelming amount of hot sauce in everything, so that didn't help at all. I had to make a second meal just so my kids would eat. I brought the topic up with my husband again on Friday because I was really past my limit. I told him that him and the kids need to stop doing everything mother-in-law wants and help with the housework because it's not fair that I'm cleaning up after 6 people. He said things would be different once everything was settled down. She only just moved in a couple of weeks ago. And said he would be more diligent in helping and getting the kids to help too. However, Sunday rolls around and every single person here is watching me clean, and every single one of them walked right by me. Bonus points for the fact that they were putting dishes in the sink versus clean them. I just cleaned all of them. Or walking through my pile of dirt or walking on a freshly mopped floor. I lost my shit. They were all sitting in the living room watching a movie with mother-in-law, and I told them all to leave immediately. Go find something to do outside of this house so I'm not continuously cleaning up filth that they create. My husband immediately jumps up and starts apologizing and trying to help me. Same with the kids. I told them it was too late for that and they need to leave. My husband and kids are actually fully understanding, having apologized to me since, and actually surprised me with flowers and a sparkling clean kitchen, bathroom this morning. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, is saying I was out of line for purposely making everyone feel like second-class citizens in their own home versus just use my words like a big girl. AITA? Edit. Before anyone asks, I have spoken to mother-in-law prior to this about her needing to stop asking my kids or husband to dote on her when they're doing their chores. She said something to the effect of, "They can always do them later. Time is precious and I won't be here much longer." NTA, you did use your words. You spoke to your husband. Your mother-in-law is a guest. She doesn't need to understand or approve. She only needs to follow the rules. Tell your husband to give her chores, to tell her to never talk to you that way again, and to follow your instructions or she will have to live elsewhere. NTA, you and your husband need to go over the house rules with mother-in-law. Make sure she understands that your family is a team and everyone has a part to play. She is trying to guilt manipulate the situation with her comment that they can do it later. It's not a one-off thing. It seems it's whenever she wants to do something. It's a new situation for all of you, and mother-in-law is adjusting to it and figuring out her place. If she can't help cooking, maybe give her a role to do so she doesn't feel like a guest. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.